Albanese government's grip on our national borders is slipping after a third illegal boat landed in WA on Friday. The latest arrival understood to be around 15 people. They're believed to be Chinese after authorities tracked down the missing suspected asylum seeker. Clearly, people smugglers have begun changing their tactics, but Albanese doesn't want to update the 2013 Sovereign Borders program. Here he was today.
We have a very large coastline. What is clear, though, is that people who are unauthorised arrivals won't be settled in Australia. Operation Sovereign Border principles will apply, as they have been in this case.
All right, let's now bring in Strategic Analysis Australia Director Peter Jennings. Peter, thanks so much for your time once again. Look, is it concerning that the boats are actually now making it to Australian shores and aren't being detected on their passage here?
Absolutely it is, Shari, and I think there's a couple of conclusions one can draw from that. One is that the people smugglers are very closely attuned to watching the political debate in Australia, and it's not accidental that we've had three just in the space of a couple of weeks. And I suspect what that means is that more will come. The other thing is the people smugglers are a very agile opponent. They will change their business model. And one possibility that is being talked about now is that far from moving these people in hulks, which are really intended to be sunk once they get close to the coast, they're in fast speedboats which can beat a hasty retreat with the people smugglers in them, having landed some people. And it is an incredibly difficult task to surveil the Australian coast up in that northwest region, with the expectation of being able to pick up, small speedboats, for example. So I think that means the government desperately does need to look at its response to what is a changing business model and realise that it's not just accidental that three boats have arrived. What that probably means is that more are on the way or will be soon.
Yeah, and that's, three since November. Look, I want to turn to AUKUS. We're seeing reports today that there's a major shake-up and Japan could soon enter the AUKUS Security Pact, of course, alongside Australia, the US and the UK, as the name suggests. What do you think? Is this a good idea to bring Japan into the fold, given its military expertise?
Japan is the only country that I would be pleased to see added to the AUKUS list. And the reason for that is that they have a very strong industrial science and technological capability, so they can bring real oomph, to use a technical term, Shari, to this discussion. Secondly, they also have a sense of the level of strategic threat which the region faces from a more aggressive China. And really that means Japan is very different to deal with now than it was 15 or 20 years ago. The caution has gone. There's a speed in the way that they're strengthening their own defence capability. And I think bringing that sense of urgency and capability to AUKUS is something that we should welcome at the moment. So that's my one exception. I wouldn't have New Zealand in there. I wouldn't do anything that sort of turns this into some sort of general diplomatic discussion. This needs to be a technology-focused defence grouping that's all about dealing with a current threat that's getting seriously worse.
Now, Peter Jennings, in your former role, or one of your former roles, you were the Deputy Director of Australia's Defence Department. I've been speaking on the show tonight about how the Albanese government has been over-the-top outraged about the accidental death of one aid worker, as tragic as it is. I want to ask you, how often are civilians killed in wars accidentally?
Well, Shari, I was Deputy Secretary for Strategy. I actually worked quite closely with Mark Binskin during some of the worst periods of our time in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what I can tell you on the basis of that direct experience is, unfortunately, particularly when you're fighting terrorists, civilians will be harmed or killed. And it is certainly true that a number of Australians were killed by, civilians were killed by Australian forces in Afghanistan during the course of combat operations. I can tell you this, the Australian government at the time and the Australian Defence Force at the time would not welcome the idea of an external country saying, well, now we're going to review the adequacy of how you dealt with that situation. Because decent defence forces, like ours is and like the Israeli Defence Forces, goes to inordinate lengths to avoid civilian casualties. And I think the way that proposition is being ignored by this government is simply ridiculous. It pays no attention to the reality of how Israel operates in military conflict, even allowing that there has been some, appallingly sad losses of civilian life in the course of this conflict in Gaza.
Yeah, such strong and accurate comments there, drawing on your direct experience, Peter Jennings. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.